like to now go, I guess, over the first panel. So we are excited to have a few of members and colleagues from the Supreme Committee joining this panel. And it's going to be around safe and stay safe at the stadium, at the sports environment, focusing on accommodation, focusing on also how the elements of safety and security have been really taken upon, let's say in comparison, what used to take place before, but now what are the changes and what are the ramifications and effects and impact.
Yes, and the session will be moderated by Ms. Elisabetta Trinchero, Associate Professor of Practice, SJ Bocconi School of Management.
So we'd like to invite Ms. Elisabetta to the panel and for her to lead. Good morning, Ms. Elisabetta. Good morning, Caspar and Gordon. We just want to welcome you to this panel on Stay and Stay Safe. And we'd like to invite Elisabetta as the host and the moderator for the session. Please, everyone, welcome Ms. Elisabetta.
Good morning, everyone. As you said, I'm studying the last 20 years at Bocconi School of Management, risk management, and within, a high risk environment. So today we are here to ask some questions and to talk about some key issue about safety and security with Mr. Gordon Penney and Mr. Caspar Morley. They are both working as Gordon Penney as a health, safety, security and environment corporate senior manager, while Caspar Morley is the accommodation director at Supreme Committee for Delivery and Legacy. So welcome, Gordon, welcome, Caspar. If you want, I would really like you to present yourself and to briefly explain, your experience, your past experience, present experience, and then we can start with our panel. So please, Gordon, the floor is yours.
Good morning. Thank you for the invite to be on today's session. So I'm a former military member, spent 25 years within the Canadian military, and spent the majority of my career in the emergency response crisis management field. I've been with the Supreme Committee now for 7 years, but I've been in Qatar for 17 years. So I've really watched it grow and evolve and stuff like that. And one of the things that keep coming to mind every time I speak about Qatar is the level of resilience that we have, and to be able to learn, adapt, and move forward and so forth. So hopefully today, I'd like to be able to share some lessons learned on the journey that we've had so far with the football tournaments itself. My role, again, is presently within the HSSE field, and the crisis management apparatus within the Supreme Committee sits within my department. And we kicked off, as soon as COVID kicked off, we activated the crisis management apparatus. And it's been a long journey, but it's been a rewarding journey with working with such a tremendous group of professionals and so forth. So thank you so much, Elisabetta.
Yeah, because as you're saying, among other challenges, we have the new one, this huge challenge that is COVID-19. And so let's start about it, and let's see how this, how have you faced the challenge in the last year that COVID-19 has posed in the planning of and the delivery of major events?
Well, without a doubt, COVID-19 has released an enormous set of challenges within every industry in the world, and sports being no different itself. And as we all know, everybody probably on this call being the Trinchero Institute with many fields that we're gathering as an audience, running and organizing a major event, whether it be a sporting event or not, is something that's very complex with a lot of uncertainty and enormous challenge. Now, you inject COVID into any type of organization, committee and stuff like that, it doubles that complexity, uncertainty, and challenges. And this is when it becomes a challenge to decision-making, to making sure the data is correct before you make decisions and informed major decisions itself. So this is the journey that we're on so far, and we've managed to embrace it. We've run successfully now 3 football tournaments, the AFC Championship, East and West, and of course the FIFA Club World Cup itself.
Thank you. So now let's introduce Mr. Caspar Morley. Can you please again introduce yourself? What are you doing? And especially again, can you tell us what is COVID posing to you in the last year, and how are you facing it within your job?
Yeah, good morning. Thank you. So my name is Caspar Morley. I'm the Accommodation Director at the Supreme Committee. I've been here quite some time, probably the longest event that has been run to date. So we've been looking at the accommodation challenges since 2012. And the approach has been to try and understand the compact nature and the impact that that has on the accommodation operations, which is a positive and a negative. And we've been looking at what we think the anticipated demand will be. And then on the other side of that, the supply of accommodation in Qatar. Qatar has a large quantity of hotels under construction, and that therein lies a challenge in itself, and actually links into the COVID challenge more than anything else, because we haven't actually been operating accommodation and won't be until the Arab Cup and then mainly for the FIFA World Cup. However, the impact of COVID has been more in the construction progress. Obviously, with restrictions placed upon working environment, our contractors and the contractors out in the field have been challenged because they've had to reduce staff on site. That's had a direct impact on completion of construction. And then that all has a knock-on effect to what we think we'll be having in 2022, and as far as our what we call permanent accommodation will be. The other side of the COVID challenge is obviously recruitment. We're coming into the most busiest time. This year will be, from accommodation perspective, our busiest year in terms of recruitment. We are live selling now accommodation to commercial affiliates. The media and broadcast workshops are this week, so we'll start selling to them. And obviously, we need people on the ground working for us. And so the restriction of people coming to the country has had a direct impact. So for the last year, I've had probably 6 members of staff working remotely whom I've never met, which in itself is a challenge and an odd place to be in. We've had online interviews and they've been working for over a year online, but we made it work.
So I think that this can be, as you said, even it gave you the opportunity also to probably have the possibility to reach more people, because working remotely, you can probably have even the opportunity to recruit, to have a more, a better audience. I don't know. Did you have this? Did you have the?
Yeah, it certainly helped, and it's been an interesting way of working. We've all got used to speaking to a computer rather than to an individual. However, what I would say is, as the tournament gets closer and the event gets more challenging, then we won't be able to do it online. And equally, when you're looking at accommodation sales, people need to see where they're staying. The commercial affiliates and the broadcasters are used to coming to the cities and visiting the accommodation and getting a feel for what it looks like and how the operations are, and is it clean, and much as a digital or online walkthrough and photographs will give you some feel, at the end of the day you need to be on the ground. And on the flip side, then the customer service, to be there to show them, to get them from venue to venue, to explain, is can't be beaten. And so we are going to get to a point where within the next 6 months we need to be on the ground. Okay. And indeed so will the constituent groups.
Going back to Gordon again, how are you planning to face this challenge implementing the FIFA World Cup Qatar 2022?
Yeah, Elisabetta, first of all, I'd like to take you through some of the lessons learned that we've had from our journey so far. And and first of all, I think it's worth appreciating that when you deal with people that organize major events and tournaments, they're quite used to high stress environments, and they're used to collecting data, making decisions, and moving very quickly, and so forth like that. So that's a plus. But when dealing with COVID, the areas that we found concern, I'll give you some examples on the tournament. So even though COVID was very evident before we identified that, okay, let's try this, I had a real difficult time with the tournament people, with the event management people itself at first, at the beginning, to convince them that it was necessary for us to look at each and every activity through a risk assessment. Because in order to identify the major choke points and the major issues, you have to go with everything. So essentially with the tournament, in a football tournament, people land at airports, they get aboard a bus, they go to the hotel, they go to training, and then they go to matches. And when it comes to this hidden disease of COVID, this hidden enemy that I call it, you have to be able to find the areas where you will have what I call major touch points. And within that, you've got to get the functional area, which is common in the football world, is to get them to accept that that is a risk, and then for them to adopt a new behavior. And that was at the first AFC tournament. It was enormous. We met with every functional area lead within the football environment, everybody from transport to competition to catering to whatever. And at the onset, for them to accept that they had to make a behavior change based on the current crisis was an enormous challenge for the first term itself. So that was number one. Number two, when it came to the implementation part, it was a real challenge because people don't like to change. People don't like to change, and when it came to complacency, was high on the first couple of days of our first tournament. And then we stood up what we called a compliance group, a series of compliance officers that actually became the COVID policemen for lack of better terms. And they were distributed all through the tournament. And you can imagine now in every hotel, every training site, every stadium, and the airport, these compliance officers were actually enforcing the regulations. And my experience before we actually did the risk assessment for the first AFC tournament, I did some research on the NHL in Canada that were actually going through their first tournament, and also the NBA in the US. And I reached out to a couple of people that were responsible for it, and they gave me one piece of advice. And the piece of advice was, make sure you stay to your protocols and you have strict enforcement of your protocols, because people are people. They want to, in a game of football, it's such an emotional sport, they want to be back to normal. So everybody's fine when we're in a call and we're discussing it, or when we do a risk assessment. But in actual fact, once the ball kicks off, that emotion takes over and complacency is easily takes over itself. So that was number two. And in my journey with COVID so far, and no different in the crisis management world, there's two elements that you need to focus on when it comes to dealing with a crisis. And that is prevention, of course. You prevent and mitigate as much as you can beforehand. And then is the response mechanism that is in place. So with the hidden enemy, the COVID, the only way of responding to it is testing. Is testing. Now we have more tools in our toolbox right now with the vaccine, and we'll speak a little bit about that later. So you have the testing. Now, what we do know about the testing, you need to test often because you need to get accurate data. In order to handle any type of crisis, you need to have real information that's factual and so forth. And so on a football tournament, you have a couple of factors that you need to consider. You have a defined timeline where the football tournament integrity must be maintained. And to keep that defined timeline, but you also have another key factor, which is in order to do testing, you need a minimum of 48 to 72 hours prior to the match, prior to the session, to ensure that the venue is safe. So you will have a window of probably, let's say, and actually in the first term, we had 48 hours. We didn't have 72. The science got better as we rolled through the various tournaments, but we had 48 hours. We were testing everybody in a very strict testing regime. As soon as they come in from the airport, we do the first test, they would isolate, and then they would come out. So all that to say, it was a very strict testing regime, everybody that was involved. So from the hotels, the hotel staff, from the teams, the team staff, and from as well as the workforce testing itself. So that all became a part of the mechanism that we needed to be able to respond. So, and the next challenge with that is, what do you do after results come out? Now you have a tournament that's on a very defined timeline. you have a very strict testing regime, and you're getting accurate data. But what do you do when results do come out and you have positive cases? And quite honestly, we had positive cases. We continue to have, and we go for, and we go through the hoops of saying, using a business continuity hat on, how do we keep this more safer and so forth. So we stood up what we call a tournament coronavirus preparedness group. And in the game of responding to any type of emergency is bringing the right people in the room to be able to assess the data that's coming out. And those are in a football tournament, obviously, is the executive management, is also is the medical practitioners, it's the functional area leads, and so forth. And this TCVP was a 24/7 operation that worked around the clock in regards to looking at data. As a group, we met once a day in the mornings to be able to assess a few things. Number one is what happened over the last 24 hours. The next question was, how has it impacted us? And the next question is, what are we learning? And what is it that we need to put in play right now to help to keep the people safe in the tournament, and then keep the integrity of the tournament. So those were enormous challenges. And to get, and to bring in all of a sudden a new apparatus called the Tournament Coronavirus Preparedness Group into a field of an event management or a tournament thing that they've never done before was sometimes very challenging to getting the buy-in and so forth. And the first tournament, it was very challenging. So after the first tournament, I must say, we had continuous buy-in going forward. And eventually on the second AFC tournament, things became a lot more smoother. We had collective buy-in and collective buy-in and so forth, and everything went really well. So your question was basically, what would we do to plan going forward and so forth? And what I do know, and what I think is really important here, is that I'm already getting questions. What are we going to do for the Arab Cup? And what will we do with this? What will we do with that? And so forth. And the answer is, the world doesn't know yet. However, if we set up the right apparatus, I'll call it, then we will be in a much better decision to decide. And what I am, and I had discussions already, what we're going to set up very soon within our organization. And I like to call it the new norm, the new normal of the football, because it is the new normal. We have to understand it. You had a presentation yesterday from the Dr. Magreda, I do believe, and very interesting on the COVID vaccine, how it's going to roll out and so forth. And that it's going to be an enormous challenge in itself. And for me personally, I believe that COVID is going to be with us for the next 5 years in our vocab. Now, as the 5 years go, it'll be less of our it'll be less times we'll need to use it in our vocab, but it's going to be there, as I'm concerned. And the only way to be able to deal with it is to do what great organizations do, is they define the resilience by how much they monitor, how quick they learn, and how quick they make decisions in the right direction to keep the tournament going. So this new normal football committee or group, whatever, would have people that have the right people, the right structure, and the right environment. You know, and I always go back to something real in life that says, how has that ever happened before where someone really deal with a crisis? And I go back with the Chile mine disaster in 2010, where 33 miners were located 700 meters below the Earth's surface in a cave-in, and they were given a less than 1% chance of survival. And for anybody that doesn't know the study, there's been many leadership studies on why, with less than 1%, did those people survive. And in actual fact, it came down to three things: the right people, the right structure, and the right environment. And the right people with the right skill set they brought in from across the world to deal with it. The right structure was how they formatted, getting the real data, accurate data to be able to make decisions. And the right environment was nobody was going to be wrong. Everybody contributed and everybody was in it together. So it was a solid base of leadership from above the ground where the miners were at, and even below, there's a very big success story there as well. So anyway, all that say, for the World Cup going forward, we need to continue to monitor in this type of apparatus the current risk environment, because it changes daily. So we know right now that the vaccine's being rolled out. what we do know right now, there is really no experts in what's happening right now. We're learning every day something different. We're learning how the efficacy of the vaccines. There's still uncertainty reference the variants themselves, is how successful is the vaccines over time and so forth. Can people get reinfected again? Can people get infected with the vaccine, and how does that impact on our future tournament and so forth? So having all of that and monitoring that environment, collecting that data, bringing in the right people, and then making the decisions. And I'm quite comfortable that we'll be in a good position when it comes to our tournament coming up, because our organization has a tendency to be really resilient, and so does the country. And you know, in the risk management field, there's always positives, and there's always positive opportunities, and there's always negative impacts, without a doubt. And I believe in, you know, one thing on a positive opportunity, as I see here in Qatar, in the midst of a pandemic, we have a delivery company called Talabat, and they deliver food to around the country. You look at Talabat now, they've taken advantage of the positive opportunity that this risk gave us, and they are doing amazing business. And they have now gone from the basement right up to the top, where you see them everywhere. So that's an opportunity. And I think we have that opportunity in the football world, is to embrace the moment, take it serious, but really monitor the current risk environment, and then deal with it, what we need to deal with, and then make decisions based on calculated risk to keep it in a safe way. But I'm quite confident that we can surely succeed.
Yeah. How? Yes, because as you said, the governance of it is very well settled, and yeah, and you have the strength to actually to manage it. I'm sure about it. And also because I think that COVID, as you were saying before, you were talking about the safety culture, no? And I think that COVID somehow is aligning the individual goals with the collective goals. And somehow it will help to have people to follow the protocols that actually you have set in place. So talking with Caspar again, can you please, as did Gordon, tell us what you have learned and what are the learning outcome of the last year?
I think the challenge we have learned, well, the first problem we have is that we haven't actually done any operations of accommodation during the COVID. However, we have a plan to operate what we call temporary accommodation during the tournament. Obviously, permanent accommodation, which are hotels, hotel apartments, will follow government guidelines in their sanitation and cleaning and staffing protocols. However, for us, we will be operating probably the biggest service department directly in the world for the tournament. So we will be employing companies to operate those apartments. They will include provision of OS&E, so that's linen, laundry services, etc. So we need to now add on another layer, which we wouldn't have otherwise had to have considered, which is the method by which we undertake the cleaning and sanitation of rooms, both in terms of the changeover. So obviously when a new guest arrives, and we need to make sure that's clean, but also when a guest is staying for a number of days and we're going in to do the daily cleaning or whatever that process is, there's obviously an opportunity for the guests to be exposed to COVID, but not in a manner that they can manage. What I mean by that is someone's coming into their room, they don't know when, they don't know who. So we need to be extra vigilant to ensure all those staff coming in are being properly vetted, tested, and actually trained to understand the impact of their actions. And we see that here in the office, and Gordon will have worked with the facility management team. We no longer have the cleaners coming in during the day, they're coming in the evening. No doubt there's a protocol which Gordon's put in place for their accessing of the building. We need to use Gordon's knowledge and experience and apply that to our hospitality service providers to ensure that then that's passed across the whole provision. So as a question popped up, I think the provision of hotels, obviously, currently we as the Supreme Committee look at just host country provision. The hotels used by what we call FIFA constituent groups, so that's teams and commercial affiliates, hospitality, they're actually dealt with directly by FIFA and Qatar 2022, which is the local LOC. So they will manage the requirements of those guests. They'll be directly in discussions with the hotels. And so the protocol for COVID will sit with their responsibility, and they will no doubt have their own protocols in place. So our focus mainly is for our temporary solutions, and we would expect the Ministry of Health and Civil Defence and the other bodies to be placing upon the hotels their requirements in terms of providing appropriate sanitation and operational practices during the tournament.
Okay, thank you. So again, are you planning to to do some teaching with, do you have any education moment, any debriefing moment, any meeting that you are going to do to keep the people, focus on the protocols?
Yeah, I think that we're just in the process of procuring our accommodation, what we call hospitality service providers, to come on board to start our operational planning. Now, obviously, everyone knows from the event world, operational planning has many guises. Our operational planning is down to the room operations as well. So that'll be changeover, its reception services, its luggage handling, all these elements which sit within the servicing of a service department property. So in that onboarding of our hospitality service provider, one of the elements is training. And training was more about the guest services, the housekeeping services, laundry services, but for sure we're going to have to include within that training protocol the COVID-19 requirements. And again, we've looked for Gordon's assistance on that, and we'll be incorporating that quite heavily into that training manual and protocol. And then obviously we as the SC will be accountable for ensuring that those protocols are then adhered to. And doing checks and ensuring that the staff are adhering to it and understand it and actually perform in the manner they're expected to perform.
Elisabetta, if I just
Yes,
comment on that, within all the three tournaments that we had a training apparatus as well, and I was part of it, and I fully concur. Training is so essential, and dealing with something like COVID, it's, I use the enforcement part heavy on the first tournament because it kind of needed it. But it was probably into the first week of the first tournament that we ran into an issue right away. We had a cluster of cases and we were dealing with it. But once everybody had the reality check, it became a collective buy-in and a vision, and everybody had the vision of keeping everybody safe. And that's when it really changed for us as a workforce and as the functional area leads and so forth. I noticed Michelle put a question in there, how to help teams be more adaptable than normal amidst the unexpected situation. And you know what, from the team perspective, the majority of the teams that came already, they already have buy-in. These are highly disciplined athletes. They want to perform, and they're going to get to perform as long as they fall within the regulations and follow the COVID prevention measures and stuff. So it was very easy to convince the teams as such. We did have some issues, but very little, and they went away very, very quickly. And again, the training apparatus is really crucial, but I like to use the word education more than training, because it's creating the awareness of what's possible when it doesn't go well. And nobody wants to see that. And once you cascade that message, then you got buy-in from everybody. Then you don't have to enforce the fact of putting your mask up, don't wear it on your chin, put it up here, social distance, wash your hands, and so all of the necessary precautions. And once you had that collective buy-in, is good. But again, training, education is crucial. And one of the things that we did a couple of videos were cascaded. Our communication team is on the TCVP, and each day, from a communication perspective, we asked that communication specialist, what is it that you need to do today to be able to continue to reinforce what we've been trying to say all along? And they've done a tremendous work on that.
Thank you so much. Yeah, and you know, because as you said, the education itself is a challenge in this moment, and yes, probably to do some video is helping because you can reach them and they can, you know, be embedded in this new culture in a safe environment. So again, Gordon, because of COVID, we are moving from a face-to-face event to some hybrid, or in some case even a fully online event. So in this process, which challenge are you seeing, and how are you facing them?
You know what? As I said before, people are resist change. And what if there's message that I'm very aware of is that the COVID environment changes every day. There's many peer-reviewed research materials out there right now from places like Israel, Scotland, and so forth that are at the top of their game. But they're only learning as fast as COVID, as fast as the vaccines come out. So without a doubt, we will have different procedures and different protocols in place the time that we do our next tournament. And then we will have to start back from scratch to kind of create the awareness and education with everybody and so forth. And I think that's going to be the main challenge, is to continue to learn, and accept the changes, but then cascade the changes so everybody understands them. Because not everybody understands how COVID spreads and how quick it can get out there and so forth. And the new variants, some of the new variants spread very, very quickly, like as we're experiencing right now. So it's learning from the risk environment from a day-to-day basis, capturing that, asking the key question is, what do we need to do to change? How do we adapt to this? And then implementing that. So going forward in the manager world and so forth, I would, and you indicated earlier, and I fully concur with it, within the managerial world, we need to inject some basic skills, because it's not complicated, but skills on how to assess within your own functional area how much COVID could impact you and what do you need to do about it. So it's a collective approach, but no different than we have an area that we, as a manager, you need to be some skill set. This needs to be part of a skill set now going forward for the foreseeable future, at least for the next couple of years anyway.
Okay, thank you. So coming back to Caspar, I have seen a very nice innovation. I think, at least it is for me. I'm talking about the eco floating hotel. So it is very nice. It is very, it's a dreaming idea. So can you talk about it and see how how if you had to face any challenge again about COVID, and how you will cope with it?
Yeah, thank you. Well, the use of cruise ships for hotels actually goes back some way. We did a piece of work back in 2014 where we were looking at temporary accommodation and different solutions, and went through various iterations of what could be done. And we found from our investigations that as far back as Barcelona in 1992, where they had 9 cruise ships. It's something which has been growing and been used multiple times. And even recently in 2016 Rio Olympics, they had a cruise ship there for floating hotels, and in New Zealand for the Rugby World Cup in 2011. So there's multiple examples of this approach. So when we started looking at this as a solution, and indeed it was used in Qatar in 2006 in the Asian Games. So as we approached this as a solution, we found that a lot of these cruise ship companies look to plan their charters 2, 3, 4 years in advance. So this then put pressure on us to be clear on what we were looking for. So we managed to secure 2 cruise ships, and they will be berthed full-time in Doha Port, which for us is fantastic. I mean, the location of Doha Port is brilliant. The offering will be full board, but it also includes entertainment on board and all that you'd expect to find on a cruise ship. So all that is great. However, of course, COVID then threw a spanner in the works because we all know where cruise ships are currently. They're all generally moored off a coast of some country, unused and sitting idle. And the reason for that is because of the closeness of the guests on board. And that immediately creates a challenge and a problem for us, because if COVID, as Gordon has said, is an issue, then our approach to the health and safety on board the cruise ship for guests and visitors is going to be quite something, and something that we've flagged up. We need to start planning. We'll be working both with the cruise ship operator as well as our team to come up with a plan. And really, you know, Gordon said it all. It's about planning, educating, and training. And as long as everyone is aware, and the one thing we haven't picked up on yet is it's not just educating the staff, it's educating the visitor as well. And probably more importantly, the visitor, because the staff will hopefully do what they're told, but the visitors, Gordon said, generally, and we all think about visitors sitting in the stadium. And of course, my job is looking after them when they're in the accommodation, when they're generally more relaxed. So, you know, when they're walking from their cabins to have something to eat, when they're sitting watching Cirque du Soleil or whatever activity they're undertaking on board, they need to always be constantly reminded and vigilant about this challenge that we have. So the floating hotel provides a very sustainable opportunity to provide temporary accommodation. And that's something which we've been driving, because the two flagship temporary accommodation solutions are utilizing existing or under construction real estate. So we're not physically constructing them for the tournament. They are in their own right being constructed. And also bringing in cruise ships, one of which will be running on LPG, one of the first new cruise ships we built. It comes off the dock in January next year, so we'll be the first guests on board. And it provides a solution that can sail away at the end of the tournament and goes on to in legacy to do what it was originally built to do. The real estate is the other sustainable solution, and we'll be utilizing real estate during the tournament, and then the government will be then providing that through the government ministry that otherwise provides accommodation for their staff. So that will then be held in legacy for staff and used by them.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, you know, it seems really an amazing project. I really would like to see it. Okay, so coming back again to Gordon, we are actually at the end of this brief meeting. You know, we have talked about governance, we talk about culture, process. You know, do you have any further advice that you want to share?
You know, like I said, I think you know, the vaccine is the tool in the toolbox right now that's playing out, and that's really crucial to our success going forward. Especially as we go through to the major tournaments and so forth. But I think my as I already said, I think we should just embrace it. I mean, we as a human race have the ability to adapt and move on, you know, very easily. In fact, I had a coffee with a friend 2 weeks ago, and he said to me, he says, you know, Gord, he said Martians would land on Earth on Monday. It'll be a big news for 2 or 3 days. And then after 2 or 3 days, life will go back to normal, and we would just accept them or whatever. However, I said to him, I said, yeah, but I'd probably check to see if they had a COVID test before they left. But so I just think we need to embrace it. This is a new normal. It's not going to change. Whether COVID goes away in 2 or 3 years, I think now, because this is now, if you did a risk assessment 3 years ago on a possibility of a pandemic within your organization or within a country, whatever, people wouldn't listen to it. In fact, in my organization, underneath my crisis management apparatus, we did do a pandemic exercise. And long before COVID, it was actually 2 years before COVID happened. And we did manage to pull the right entities together from the ministry and so forth to have a very productive exercise. And believe it or not, 2 years later, we met the same people when we kicked off our crisis management apparatus and so forth. So I guess my advice is that get used to the new normal because now it's a risk that's very plausible, and it's something that you should take very serious. Does it mean you should be scared? No, it shouldn't. It should mean you should do it like defeating any type of overcoming any challenges. Hit it head on. Hit it head on, and that embrace it, learn from it, adapt, and then make the decisions that you need to make to continue on with what you need to do.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I think so. You know, you say managing the unexpected. No, somehow you have to be to try to become the unexpected expected. To have a vision, to have the ability to see it before it comes, and then try to prepare yourself to face it, and then learning from the experience. That's the no blame culture that you are posing, because the only way you have to learn from your experience is to be very transparent of what you are facing, and try to understand, to see, you know, to see if you have make any mistakes, and then starting from them going on. So yeah, I fully agree with you. And so Caspar, please, can you again share with us any final thoughts about you know, this last years, and you know, the one that is coming?
Yeah, I think that, you know, Gordon said you've got to adapt. As I said earlier, we've adapted to this remote working. And when I say remote, most people are used to people going home and working from home. I'm talking about people working from thousands of miles away who have never been to Qatar, but have a lot of event experience and have been able to bring that on board and understand from a digital perspective and viewing it through screens. One of the challenges going forward, which I haven't yet mentioned, and it's always been a concern of us since day one, which is the demand and how many people we're expecting. Obviously, from accommodation perspective, from a team perspective, it's clear. There's 32 teams, and they will be coming hopefully in 2022. But from a guest experience, and how many people will we be expecting? There's an expectation that there's an unconstrained demand coming to the country, and that's fine. But what's the impact on my operations if COVID's still there, and therefore there's a restriction on travel like we're seeing at the moment? So we've got another year or so, and so we have to do a lot of risk mitigation and planning for that scenario as well, which is something we'll be looking to do over the next 12 to 18 months.
Okay. Thank you so much. So if I don't know if there are any questions from the field that
One question there. Says, do you have preparations in the event of an outbreak among the players? So that's a great question, and the answer is yes. Within the protocol of response, as I indicated from the beginning, it's so important that your response is very swift and decisive. During the tournament, on the average, as soon as results came out of the lab, I'll just speak in general for a second before I talk about teams. On the average, the 24/7 compliance team that were in hotels, stadiums, and matches, within 4 minutes, the person who was considered to be positive or by the virtue of the test, they were isolated, and their well-being was checked in on. Like how well are they? Are they asymptomatic, symptomatic, or asymptomatic? And that was a normal process, and it worked extremely well. So there was a protocol from there. So if it happened under workforce, either way under workforce, if we had a positive case, there would be the isolation, the immediate contact tracing by the ministry and the medical team, but then a step further on regards to my team from a business continuity perspective. And the questions that we would ask the functional area representative was, okay, who is this person? How much contact? How does this impact your operations? And one of the things that really worked well for us on midway through the first tournament and then for the rest, when we did the risk assessment for the second tournament and the third tournament, we asked all of the functional area leads to plan for a team A and a team B. Now, I'm well aware this can't be done everywhere, but at least we advocated to everybody, please have somebody else know your work, because all of a sudden you could get that call, or you could get the tap on the shoulder that I apologize, however, you've been tested positive and you need to isolate right away, which means you're immediately out of the equation. So that was normal for the workforce and everybody else. So there's a contact trace from the ministry, from the medical people, and then there's a further business continuity exercises, as I would say, that we would take forward with the functional area affected. So on a team perspective, it was the same thing. Within the teams, if we had a positive case with teams, and we did, we had a positive case on the first tournament. We had 5 players come from the airport that tested positive. Immediately, the first thing that we did as part of our protocol was over the next few days was to continuously test. And the team had no problems with that. Did we take a calculated risk and have them go train? We sure did. Did we put in additional measures to ensure they can go train? We sure did. So the whole idea was respecting the integrity of the tournament based on a calculated risk with the team specifically. But at the same time was to make sure that we addressed the COVID issue and that we were responding at all levels.
Okay, we have another question for you, Gordon, I think. Say, as senior professional managing teams and coordinating multiple colleagues along reporting and collaboration lines, could you share 1-2 examples of things that as a consequence of the experience have now become magically more simple and that, as you say, will be normal going forward?
Could you share 1 or 2 examples of things that as a consequence of this experience have now become magically more simple and that, as you say, will be normal going forward?
You know, some impact on your culture that now, you know, some click that now, you know, somehow give you the opportunity to you know,
you know, I've often said the 21st century will not be defined by what one person does alone. It will be defined what teams do together. And if there's ever a point, a moment in history, or even our events, was that we realized that if we do not do this together, and everybody has a role to play, and everybody embraces the same vision, the same mission, we will not be successful. It's not about a successful term, it's about people's life safety. And I think if there's anything as a consequence, it was that people are now collaborating at a much higher level for the greater good of keeping things safe, and of course, keeping the football world safe as well.
Okay. So if there are any other further question for Caspar, I would pose to him one. You know, I know that you did an amazing job collecting all the data of the accommodation to plan. So can you share this also with our audience, because it was amazing for me to listen from you.
Yeah, I think the challenge we had at the outset when I mean, you have to remember that Qatar and the FIFA World Cup in Qatar as a tournament is completely different than any other tournament, insofar as we're playing out of one city, and we'll have all teams in the same place day one and all supporters. So that in effect is a challenge for us, as a benefit for the supporters and the tournament as well. But we had to understand between 2010 and 2022 how many hotel rooms and hotel apartments and service apartments would be available in tournament time in 2022. So as you can imagine, with a 12-year period ahead, we had a vast challenge to actually answer that question. So we began by approaching the Tourism Council and understanding whether they had this information. Where they had information on existing hotels, they had no information on under construction hotels. So we started by looking at the original bid document, where a number of hotels which were under construction had pledged rooms for the tournament. And we slowly built on that until we created a single database of all hotels, hotel apartments and service apartments, either existing or under construction in Qatar. And then we set up a team in my supply team who undertook to go and visit these hotels quarterly, meet the contractors, understand the time period for construction, and monitor the delivery of those hotels, and continued that through the years. And then this year we moved to monthly monitoring. As the tournaments got closer, we've now started to identify at-risk hotels. We've prioritized some hotels. We're now doing visits monthly to those hotels. We're now speaking to the owners and the operators of the hotels to understand their progress and soft opening and launches. So we're absolutely clear on what that supply will be at the time of the tournament. And one of the interesting facts about Qatar is that we have a much larger 4- and 5-star offering. but very few 3, 2, and 1 star. And that's obviously something we've been focused on, because the football fan isn't necessarily looking for 4 and 5 star. That's not to say there isn't demand. And so when we've looked at our temporary solutions, we've had that at the forefront of our minds to come up with a solution which is not only acceptable to the guests, but also at a price point that they're expecting. So we're trying to provide for all level of demand through the tournament guests, but also the other constituent groups. We've got hospitality, commercial affiliates, we've got media broadcast right licensees. So all these different constituent groups will be looking, and we're trying to now, through our commercial affiliate and broadcast workshops, explain to them the different opportunities in Qatar that you would not otherwise have, whereby longer stay is going to be the norm here in Qatar. You know, when you're traveling between host cities and having to fly, like in Brazil, 4 or 5 hours, then you're moving from hotel room to hotel room. In Qatar, you can be in your hotel apartment and stay in that hotel apartment for the full 28 days, and you can access all stadiums within 30, 40 minutes. And it's a completely different mindset. So we have to now explain that to the various constituent groups and try and then lead them into the idea of having a serviced apartment rather than having a hotel room, which may have less services, but it's located in an area where you can go out and have a meal in a restaurant or whatever, but also provides you with a home away from home, that you don't have to keep packing a bag and moving from room to room every so often. So, you know, that's the benefit of the compact nature. But we've done this work to hopefully then in legacy hand over this compact database, which we can pass to our colleagues in the National Tourism Council, and link that into a civil defence and security and everyone else who can then use this as a fantastic tool going forward.
Thank you so much. Yeah, it was amazing to me to listen this from you, and also I think that this can be something that you can also share with other countries that are going to face the same challenge. Okay, so I think that what we have heard is, as you said, a resilient country that is actually with a great effort, trying to plan everything, and also to have the governance structure to actually face the challenge. And so I think that if you don't have any further question, we can actually thanks our panelists, and so thanks Gordon Penney, thanks Caspar Morley, and so I think that it was a great session. Thank you so much.